We got a great guest today. Really looking forward to this conversation with Zack from Nomadix. Should be a good one for all you e-commerce brands trying to break into wholesale. So, Zack, why don't we start with maybe a brief intro on yourself and the backstory of Nomadix?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Great to see you as always, Kabir. So I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Nomadix. We're an outdoor consumer products company that is best known for launching the only towel you need, which launched 11 years ago on Kickstarter. It was a towel that could replace the functionality of a yoga towel, beach towel, and travel towel. So you can buy one towel instead of three. Fast forward to today, we're in retailers all over the country, and we've got lots more products than we launched with. But yeah, based here in Southern California, great place to test out towels. And yeah, happy to share my experience.
Yeah, nice, awesome. Good to meet you. I was going to say you must have more than one towel now along that journey of innovation. What was the original insight that led you to getting started? How did it come about?
Yeah, so me and my two co-founders, Chase and Hunter, were ski bums in Colorado. We packed up all of our possessions into the back of the Subaru Outback. We did a camping trip through Colorado, the deserts of Utah, and landed in California. And we discovered on that trip that we had too much activity specific gear. And the car was just totally packed with like skis and skateboards and backpacks. And when we got to California, there was obviously a big beach scene. So there was lots of beach towels. That was my first exposure to the yoga community, and everyone had multiple yoga towels.
Yeah.
And then obviously camping. And so we just discovered that all these towels couldn't do what the others could do. Like you couldn't take your yoga towel to the beach, you couldn't take your beach towel traveling, and they were all like very, very different. So we made one towel that could do all three of those activities. And yeah, it just it resonated obviously, and we're still here. That's still our hero product after 11 years.
Yeah, and where did you take before you went B2B? Like that's the main topic of this conversation. Just thinking about that from a product angle. Where was your assortment at when you started to think about B?
We so Kickstarter was successful enough that we something like quadrupled our production quantity, and then we just started selling straight away to surf shops and yoga studios. We basically just drove door to door and seeing if they wanted to buy these towels. So we were selling B2B before we even had a website, actually. And then about 2 years into that, we had 50 accounts around the country, and we opened up REI through the innovation program that they have. And that was really, you know, growing with REI has been how we've grown our ops in terms of wholesale. Like every time REI grew, we had a new need for capacity, etc. And REI is obviously like a great partner for us. We've been nominated for REI Vendor Partner of the Year the past 3 years, which is a huge deal when, you know, companies like Arc'teryx are winning. It's crazy to even be in the conversation with that. So yeah, we started just right out of the gate, literally like one of those stories you hear, like it's out of a garage and you're selling it door to door out of the back of your
Yeah,
Subaru.
yeah, nice. And what? Just excuse my ignorance. It might be an Anglo thing, but what's REI? Are they like a big wholesale partner in outdoors? That would be my guess.
Yeah, so REI is the biggest outdoor chain in the US. It's they have like 160 stores, I think. And it's basically like the premier outdoor account. They've got all the big brands, the best assortment, the best customer service, all this for the outdoor industry.
He touched on an interesting point, which I think is really important for people breaking into wholesale, and it's that having that partnership. So you talked about how you grew with REI, how you've built that relationship with them, and then you've seen that grow over time. Talk to me how that kind of partnership has grown and how that's changed and how that's impacted kind of the business. Because I think the B2B experience and the wholesale experience, it's very different than maybe traditional e-commerce retailers are used to, where it's marketing to an end consumer versus building relationships with the buyers, trying to grow the accounts, introducing new categories. Like, how has that evolved over time with REI?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to look at all of your wholesale accounts as your distribution partners for your brand, and you want to look at the distribution as seamless. Like you want to make sure they're having the same experience in store as they're having on your website. No pricing conflicts. Like the assortment is ideally as good as it can be in both locations. Like maybe there's something special on your store, but you have a special experience in REI as an example as well. And then if you're getting started in retail, it's not always easy to like view it as a partnership because you're maybe selling to this account and you're trying to get them to buy things. But as you mature with these retailers, we've realized that it really is a two-way partnership. It's like you need them to have a healthy inventory, healthy sell-through, healthy assortment, and they need you to keep stuff on the floor. And it's a really symbiotic relationship, and the partnership view, I think, is essential to it being successful. It's like every single account that we're in, you have to look at them as your partner, and it's really like a relationship of mutual respect, and there's no one getting one over on each other. You know what I mean? You're not like trying to get more margin or anything. You got to be partnered on that experience.
Sounds a bit like B2B software with with a lot of stuff, right? I think it can be really interesting seeing that where you've got certain brands I work with where they've got a real partner mindset in how they work with you, and others haven't quite got there yet. Sometimes you can end up, rightly or wrongly, feeling like you're being treated like a bit of a supplier, and the sort of, if it doesn't go right, they'll flip across and go to something else. I think by and large, though, by the time you see someone going past like 10 million US in revenue, they figured out that if they're going to keep going, they're going to need to bring people in and around them. I was curious about like if you run that thought experiment now, having grown up in B2B, you must get asked a ton like, you've got loads of success in B2B. How are you doing all of that? And you're like, well, I kind of started in B2B, so it was like a very natural thing to me. Have you run that thought experiment for someone that isn't B2B at all today, which a lot of brands aren't? They've kind of grown up modeling on these like pure D2C, the purists. And now certainly they're starting to think about B2B. Have you done the thought experiment of how you'd approach it if you had to go from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, I think that our playbook would be the same if we were starting today, and we were mostly D2C. The lessons that we've learned are applicable to most most brands that I talk to, in terms of like building a structure of independent sales reps that are all selling to the right accounts, and there's a low friction to them opening up these accounts for your brand as well. Building a point of purchase merchandising program, so like we have racks that we put the towels on. Um, but it's I think the one of the hurdles, and I'm coming from our experience and our size and this kind of stuff, but I think one of the hurdles for direct to consumer brands doing it is there is it will take a long time. You do have to maybe go through various sales reps groups that might not work out or whatever. It'll take some trial and error, and then you don't know if it's going to sell through in the store, right? Your merchandising might be an issue. The price might be an issue. The store might be not a good fit, and so there is just a barrier to entry. But I think all the lessons we've learned, I would do everything exactly the same as we did it, but I would do it faster, basically.
And then, like from a product, how do you think about it from an assortment perspective when I assume like you're doing some product that's direct only, that's kind of stuff to create some uniqueness around, your site, but do you think when you're planning your assortment, do you think like that will sell well in a retail store, and why, and at that price point, does it get that strategic?
Yeah, we present, so like we have pre-booking is a huge part of how this works. So like we're pre-selling so much to all these accounts. The reps are out there pre-selling. After we get that data, we'll make a lot of decisions. But in that initial process, like we're building assortments for the accounts. So like if you talk about REI, it's like we're building assortment we think will sell well here. We get their feedback. There might be changes of color or whatever. It's very customized in terms of the assortment. Um, and that can happen with lots of different accounts. And then we might even do SMUs, if that makes sense. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, it can get very, very customized, which is a challenge, but also for us, it's part of the fun. It's like we don't want to just do cookie cutter and every store has the exact same experience. I think it's more fun this way.
What is SMU?
A special makeup unit, I think is the acronym, but basically it's a custom SKU. So like on our towels, like we print the designs, and so like if we have a green and white striped towel, we might say, hey, um, you know, Dick's Sporting Goods, like we'll make a special makeup unit that's a blue and white striped towel that only sells at Dick's Sporting Goods. Um, and so there's like a design process, and our sales team is amazing at creating these assortments. Like frankly, I don't really do it. I just chime in when my opinion is requested at this stage. But yeah, it's like it's really helpful as a sales tool to make sure that you're having that special experience and that sort of give and take with every account that you're talking to.
Yeah, and that have being that involved as a salesperson, even in like thinking about assortment, they're almost like merchandisers at that point, like in kind of mindset. Do you find like there's a lot of sort of career salespeople across these different verticals that kind of move between brands, or like what have you found to be the formula that works for you anyway in terms of skilling people up, or bringing someone in that they know they can they've already got they can walk in those doors because they know the right people in the right accounts. What's been the experiences there?
Yeah, so when we talk about large accounts, the ones that we've talked about so far, like that's all done in-house. So we have a director of sales. I'm on every REI call as well. We have a sales manager. So that there's a sales structure in-house, and um, we're specialists in this, right? We're like the whole program is dialed. Then you go to your sort of like regional and specialty retail, and every rep group and every salesperson in different regions, um, a lot of them have similar brands. They have a sandal brand or they have sunglasses brand, things like that that make it really easy for them to go to these accounts. But like culturally and just like background and everything is so different in each location. So you basically just have to like give them the tools and the playbook, and then let them sort of like do it their way is how we approach it.
I mean, let's dig a little deeper there because to your point, they're representing your brand. And you talk about how these stores are a distribution channel and really a representation of your brand. How do you make sure they're doing that effectively? How do you train them up? How do you make sure that the sales team can not only just sell your items and make the sales, but actually make sure it's being sold correctly and the right messaging is going out?
Yeah, I mean, you get a lot of variation around the country based on, um, how saturated your brand is in certain places, like how many accounts you have, how much attention your brand gets from the sales agency. Like if the sales agency is pioneering your brand and your brand is nowhere in that region, you're going to get less attention than if you have 200 stores and they can easily go get volume. So like normal tools to get everyone on the same page would be like we have sales meetings um, on a quarterly-ish basis. We have two big sales meetings when our seasons drop. That's when you're talking about all the new stuff, all the new prints, all that good stuff. They hear from the marketing team, they hear from everyone. And then on a day-to-day basis, our sales team, so our sales manager in partnership with our sales director, is like on the phone with them. They're processing the orders. We're working on orders with different accounts because the accounts that they're getting can be incredibly important to our brand, you know. So like we do give them attention and have like a back and forth dialogue. So yeah, it's like sales meetings, it's supplying materials, it's talking to them frequently. The more you talk to them, the better the outcome's going to be. Um, Sometimes I'm texting them, meeting them at trade shows is huge. We just did Grassroots Outdoor Alliance, which is like an outdoor industry trade show. It's 4 days long. It's just pure selling, and the reps are there, So it's they give you what you give them, I think is kind of the punchline.
Yeah. Makes a ton of sense. I mean, even getting very tactical here, I remember during our initial implementation, a big part was ensuring the sales reps had the right visibility into inventory. For them to do their jobs effectively, they need to know what they can sell through at which stores and which locations across whatever fulfillment nodes you had available. And getting that ATS right available to sell is not an easy task as I remember it.
Yeah, and like another big thing that I always think about is like, are the incentives aligned, right? Like, you have to make sure that everyone is getting a healthy commission, that you're helping them scale the business, that you give them really frictionless experience. So like ATS, um, online ordering system that's like really easy to use, and you start to get this list and you're like, wow, that's like a lot of stuff. But once you get it set up, it's a game changer because everyone is really easily able to walk into a store, place the order. They know exactly what they're getting. They don't have to change the order, all that good stuff. So yeah, setting up the
You're almost
system's
treating
huge.
the like sales rep experience is like a customer experience. The easier it is they find it to work with you, the more likely they are to try to drive sales for you.
100%. Yeah.
What does that actually look like from a tools and tech perspective then? Like what interfaces have you built across that sales process for them to come into? Like where do they place orders and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's fairly simple. Fulfil is our ERP. Kabir onboarded us. He knows all the reasons we chose Fulfil. Um, Selling available to sell inventory and that visibility was like the number one reason we chose Fulfil is their flexibility in selling that like available to sell, but also selling work in progress inventory, pre-booking inventory. That was like an absolute deal breaker if you couldn't do that.
Yep.
So Fulfill is the ERP, and then we have an ordering platform on top. We've chosen Repspark for that, and a lot of our reps were already on Repspark when we chose that. So again, it's like removing that friction. They're already in the platform.
It's
Um,
often a driver, isn't it, where people are familiar with something, so you go where they are.
yeah, it's like why fight it? Um, and then in terms of like large accounts, there's a whole nother like tech stack involved. So that's going to be EDI orders, typically they didn't always all go through SPS. Some actually were like faxing us for a while, which is crazy. But um, yeah, SPS is how we get the EDI orders into Fulfill. SPS also has an analytics platform. So yeah, I mean, it's all about like how do you collect the order, how do you get it into Fulfill, and then we have a 3PL. So like, is it shipping? Is the data passing back through the system? And like, there was a time where we didn't have all these things totally dialed in, and they would place an order, and we wouldn't have the inventory. So we have to spend time editing the order and replacing the units, and just slows down the whole
Yeah,
process.
yeah.
The reps aren't happy because their order didn't go, and so the stack is simple, and I think it's important that it's simple.
I was going to ask you for your fax number.
I cannot give you my
Just,
fax number.
just.
I'm
Can't believe you
sorry.
had a machine. It's brilliant. They'll
It's
use anything,
very,
right? And you don't decide how the biggest retailers send stuff across. They'll just fire a PDF in 5 different formats each time. And you just sort of like, you should just be grateful for having it. It's the kind of, can be the
yeah.
mentality.
And like a very important role in all of this is we've got two key roles around this. One is a director of sales operations who basically is like making sure all the orders flow through this tech stack. Um, and then the other person is the director of logistics who's making sure all the orders then go out. Uh, everything is like in compliance, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I mean, it's like, but what it's once you get that set up, then you can scale, right? There's like, we can scale to infinity at this point.
Do you run your own warehouse or are you with a 3PL for
We
logistics
we did
perspective?
our we did our own warehousing. That was another reason we chose Fulfill, actually. Kabir came and set up our warehouse. Did
Oh,
all the
awesome.
bays and everything.
He's not set me up to this, by the way. I'm just asking the questions I want to ask.
Yeah.
Just
No, 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 it's cool. This is like, uh we nerd out on this stuff. Like it was a pain in the butt, but it was actually really fun to learn warehousing and like get really fast with our pick pack and all this stuff. Yeah, like 2 or maybe 3 years ago, we went to a 3PL because we had like containers sitting outside of our warehouse that we were unloading and reloading every single day for like 2 hours, and we were like, all right, we got to get out of here.
I think it's
yeah,
an interesting decision point. I mean, there's two things you touched on. One, during the implementation of setting up. So as you all know, like Fulfill is started as a predominantly e-commerce focus ERP, and the WMS workflows were optimized for D2C, which rarely are WMSs optimized for D2C. But being at Zach's warehouse really helped me appreciate how different those workflows are. When you're picking and packing a large volume of D2C orders, you need one or two items. Maybe if you're lucky, you're doing three or four items in a single shipment and you're just knocking through them. The packing process for a wholesale order, and Zach talked about compliance, like some of them require you to pack it in incredibly specific ways. You've got to make sure these items are together. You can't have mixed items in a carton because for them, the volume of shipments they're dealing with is insane. They don't want to deal with any complexity or any risk of the items being lost. So the compliance side on wholesale orders and the different workflows, it was eye opening, and it was a fun process to his point.
Yeah, and on the topic of partnership, like, we've grown up with our large accounts and gotten competent in certain things based on their requirements. And like, I'm not gonna take credit for a percentage of this, but like, Fulfill has grown up alongside our growth as well. Like, we've seen when we had requests early on that you guys like figured out how to get it done, right? It was not currently a capability, and then now it's like pretty um baked into the system, and so like I think that with services, Oliver, like you were talking, like that partnership, if the partner is flexible and like willing to meet in the middle, you can really do
mm,
incredible things together. And it's not always the case.
Yeah. And the solution helps all the B2B merchants. And Oliver's seen that too, as you work with customers and you build solutions together and you actually see the use cases, it makes for a better partnership and a better product, just like you've seen as you've scaled Nomadix. You touched on this briefly, Oliver, switching to the kind of 3PL model. And obviously, having in house fulfillment was very helpful at some point in time. But you reached a breaking point. Kind of what helped you identify that breaking point, and how has that transition been finding the right 3PL partner, working with the 3PL after kind of relinquishing that control? Because especially on the wholesale side with EDI and everything else, like getting that right is pretty difficult.
Yeah, we were referred to our 3PL partner through a network of other brands, basically, and we chose them because they fulfilled you know similar brands and similar accounts and that kind of thing. wholesale was a big part of it. Like, can you pick and pack an order and be compliant with a, complicated shipment that's going to a large partner? Um, every time we onboarded a new one, there's a whole, process of like getting all the data to flow through, and then we check the orders and all kinds of stuff. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, we chose them because they had more reporting than other 3PLs. So like we could see every individual order and like what the shipment cost was and like did they get the DIMS right and all this good stuff. And then ability to fulfill large accounts. And then a big part of what makes it successful is our director of logistics is in-house, and he is basically checking everything they do and optimizing everything they do. So we basically have someone in-house who's completely dedicated to the 3PL being successful. And if we didn't do it that way, um, we would not have even seen the errors that happened and that we fixed, right? We just would have seen a bill and we would have no idea why it was higher than it should have been, or we wouldn't have been able to track like which shipment they got wrong to a certain account and then fix the problem for the future. And so, yeah, like we moved there for size and convenience. We picked them because they were referred to us by common brands. But like the way that we did it, I think is is a lesson that I would give to other people. Make sure that someone is in-house, like completely dedicated to managing that third party.
Honestly, it's the root cause of much of the 3PL discontent that I see. Common one that people come in with: 3PL, oh, it's awful, they're a nightmare, and you're thinking, what would they say about you? And if you like, you get under the skin a little, people are like, we've not been the best. But I actually think your particular requirements around 3PL are often where a lot of these 3PLs get tripped up. Brands that start e-commerce and it's all e-com, 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 and then they're like, oh, now we want to do B2B, and it's hard for them to understand how differently a 3PL needs to operate, particularly if they've never run their own warehouse. Like, you wouldn't get why it would. They're just like, why is it so hard to send some stuff into these big retailers? But it's complex.
Yeah, learning to operate our own warehouse beforehand was very helpful in optimizing theirs. So like as an example, like we would get a bill and it would show like, average time for pick pack or, whatever. And we would see that and we would say, okay, well, we know what our data was beforehand. So let's go to the 3PL, figure out why that's taking this amount of time. And our director of logistics would literally go and like modify their operation as it related to our business, and it would improve the metric.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's like really like scrappy, granular stuff, but like it was very
Yeah.
helpful.
There's a soundbite for anyone selling warehouse systems, which was me. I like sold a warehouse software for like 10 years. So that's exactly what we work with a brand called Surfdome in the UK. They were eventually bought by Quicksilver. And yeah, that was what they said. They ran it, they intentionally put a WMS in their own facility and they wanted to run it at scale in this new, bigger warehouse so they could get all the benchmarking. So then when they went to the 3PL, they were like, no, 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 here's the benchmarks. We set the benchmarks with the system. So this is what you need to perform with, because they'll always want to use their own WMS, right? The 3PL, that's kind of a given. But yeah, having that's a super shrewd move, having that benchmark data, because otherwise you're just totally in the dark.
Yeah, and like again on the partnership level, this is why this is like so baked into us. It's like they know that they need to get this to a certain place so that we can scale and they can scale. It's like not the incentive is completely aligned if you improve the efficiency. You know what I mean?
I think that's a great point. And also the other soundbite is just go to your 3PL. Like a lot of people think, okay, I've outsourced this. I don't have to think about it. They'll handle everything. But the benefits you've seen of really investing in that partnership and going and seeing what they're doing and where the inefficiencies are, because they don't know your product as well as you do. And only you can tell them how to do it better. And as we'll be the first to say, like, okay, 3PLs, everyone complains. But to your point, Zach, like now it's enabled you to scale. Before, unless you invested in way more warehouse space, way more people, now you can start really ramping up, and the 3PL has that distribution and availability to fulfill.
Yeah, we set at the recommendation of some advisors, we set basically like a obviously we're optimizing and trying to make it as good as we can make it, but we set like a baseline cost structure for the 3PL. And if it never exceeds that cost, then we can scale it and not lose sleep over it.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. Have those metrics up front so you're not just reacting.
Yeah.
And it's a smart move. One place I want to go from here is we've talked about kind of upstream, how you make the sales, some of the tech stack there, the ops side, and making sure you're actually delivering and fulfilling. I think the last piece is the piece that's oft forgotten, which is the actual pain point on the wholesale side of collections and AR and some of the other complexities on the financial side. It's a whole different ball game. You're not just getting paid out consistently. How do you all manage that piece, and what does that relationship look like? Because cash flow wise as well, I've seen e-commerce brands go out of business in the worst case where they didn't plan their cash flow because the retailers are not going to be paying you out immediately.
Yes. So we have cash flow documents that we update like anytime we make a decision. Like cash flow is what drives the business in terms of decision making. In terms of collecting, I mean, there's always ups and downs. Like during COVID, people were just sending out letters that were like, "Hey, we're not paying you." Um, but like general process, again, I've met CFOs at other companies, and they are like amazing at this, and we've learned some lessons from them as well. But yeah, we have a CFO, we have a controller, and then we have an accounts receivable payable type person. And so for a company, we only have 21 employees. So for a company of our size to have, you can see where our priorities are. It's like ops and like making sure people pay after we deliver. Um, so like you have to make sure the reps are vetting the accounts at the specialty level, at the regional level, where you don't know the accounts and you can't really get tons of data. You got to make sure the reps are accountable and you're incentivizing them to get quality accounts. So that can look like pay on pay, like the rep doesn't get paid unless you get paid. Um, and then you have your your team in house that's we constantly have an aging report that we look at. Anyone who's like hitting the red line, we're getting after them, making sure that like, okay, is your business healthy? Like we're holding shipments if you're not paying us, um, and that's like a pretty regular task. And then there's like dealing at large accounts, it's like dealing with terms, and there's like early payment options and all kinds of tools you can use to get your cash flow right size. But yeah, I mean, if you're in D2C and you're used to a certain cash flow model, and then you go into wholesale and you're buying the inventory up front, and then you know you get it delivered, and then you ship it, and then you have 60-day terms, like people are not always ready for that sort of like cash out period of time, right? Um, so yeah, you cash flow is like weekly, monthly, quarterly. We're always looking at cash flow, and then we're always collecting with our team.
One of the questions I've had a lot just hearing you talk about like the operational side and how different it is, what you need to do in like almost revenue operations in B2B retail is so different from revenue operations in a lot of other businesses. Like you certainly wouldn't have like sales reps selling software B2B worrying about some of these mechanics of like, oh, I've shipped some stock, and you can like turn it off if someone's not paying you. You've kind of got a lot more control. Um, what what have you found in terms of like CRM or tooling or anything really that helps you across those parts of the workflow? Because I've always drawn a bit of a blank. Like I've got my favorite tools like call recording and email tracking. Like you email someone, you can see if they open it and all that kind of thing, or logging emails. But is there any other like trips or tricks or tools that you found that are actually help improving the productivity?
So like for the sales reps that are third party contracted sales reps, like we're not on the communications, we don't have a CRM set up there. It's like more like passing information back and forth, but it's not visible, you know. Um, in-house, like we have a couple tools that we use. I'm not in love with any of our CRM stuff, to be totally honest. Um, I'm I'm like actively looking for like the marriage of like CRM to Fulfil because that's our source of truth is Fulfil. Um, and we've got some data passing back and forth, and it's like it's manageable. But yeah, in terms of like accounting stuff, it's definitely based in Fulfill. That's where our aging report happens. That's where all of our collections happen. All of our accounting happens in Fulfill. And then our team is basically you can keep your contacts with all the active accounts and stuff. And then our team's reaching out based off the Fulfill CRM. So like in terms of like active accounts who have ordered, Fulfill's doing it for us. In terms of like, yeah, sales pipeline and like stuff that's not hit Fulfill yet, we've kind of like layered on like a bit of a Frankenstein. We've got Monday.com, which is how we do project management. We haven't really committed to them as a CRM. We also use Copper as a CRM. That's
Yeah,
more
yeah, I've
like
looked at that before.
um, it's kind of cool because it connects to your Gmail and we run everything out of Gmail, so you can sort of like
Yeah,
just get the data imported in.
I've kind of been set this challenge a few times over and never really like people have sort of sent me to like a HubSpot and you've looked at that and you're like it just doesn't quite like the objects and the things don't make sense for that retail environment.
I'm surprised you haven't tried to build it over Airtable yet, Oliver.
I've got my CRM on Airtable. We're doing a fashion sourcing business at the moment where they're going, yeah, they have like deals to purchase orders and then they get wholesale orders and it's quite complex. Like there's good potential. I think whatever you look at is just like how do you like first of all have you got the foundation, which it sounds like you have with inventory and you've got what you've got in Fulfill. It's yeah, just that common problem that I think we're all battling with. Like it doesn't really matter what your job is. It's like how many tools do you have a login to now? It's like Google login makes it so easy to just log into a new tool and start using something. Oh yeah, I've got a new account on this thing, and it's free because they've got loads of funding. So now I'm using this, and someone else is using that. It's how do you bring like find a place where you all collaborate together, rather than getting more disconnected as you like throw more bits in. It's just like every company's battle, I think, at the minute, trying to see how you tie it back together.
Anything that does not connect to Fulfill at this stage is I'm very like hesitant to try because it's just another place that is going to have asynchronous data, right? If it's not flowing either to or from Fulfill, then it's just going to go out of date in like a month. You know what I mean?
Yeah, makes sense. Oliver's all too familiar. And I mean, we talked about Airtable, but the some of the other tools he's built, and I think you touched on some of the pain points you've experienced, like some of the line sheets and getting that so it's a little easier to configure and showing some of your buyers some of that stuff, right? And some of the PO management and giving people the necessary information that they need while you still have the customizability on that platform.
Yeah, pictures is the big one, I imagine, for all your salespeople and your buyers and whoever you're working with. They need to see the product, right? Whereas often systems are very like SKU code driven. It's like, well, I don't know the SKU code. I know what the pattern looks like though, and whether I want to buy that pattern when they're making decisions. It's just not always how databases work.
Yeah, so like I mean we're connected into Shopify, we're connected into Repspark. Those are basically like the visual representations of what's in Fulfill. Um, and like yeah, in terms of like a digital asset management platform, like we use Dropbox, and that's like a whole nother layer of complexity because you have to organize it a certain way, and we're not great at that. Our team is great at that, I guess I should say. It's just really challenging.
AI is coming for that big time. There's like huge innovation around AI for organizing digital assets, particularly creative. being able to like search on something really specific, like it's brown with this and this. It's like natural language search, and then being
Yep.
able to search the images. I think something's coming to solve that pain pretty quick. I don't know whether it will be Dropbox or other platforms, but like I think the bar for searching for things is about to change big time. Clicking 5 folders deep, it just kills us, doesn't it? I've never bothered to organize my Google Drive. Anyone that knows me knows that's true. Like it's just chaos.
We wouldn't be an e-commerce podcast if we didn't dig a little bit deeper into AI. I think the best way for people to learn is hearing how others are using it. And Zach, I was pretty impressed to hear how much you've dug in recently and trying to help your team utilize it and see tangible benefits. Any fun examples of how you've used it across your tech stack or operations?
Yeah, I think we're still hoping to get more pro with it and connect it to more things. But like right now, what we've done is basically created multiple projects and multiple custom GPTs that have a certain context and a certain prerogative. And um, as an example, I have one that's just for me, it's just what I typically need in terms of like experience and tone and reference points and everything like that. And I basically put queries into it, you know, 5 times a day. Small things, big things. Prior to this call, I put in a query about I just like dump context into it, right? I just record my voice and I'm like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. These are the type of things that I want. Um, and I made a sort of like KPI dashboard structure specific to our business. So I'm using it a lot for things that I think like I just otherwise wouldn't be doing. You know what I'm saying? Like I just wouldn't have had time to do that. And so I'm just it's like anything I think of, I can then do something with, right? Um, Now I'm very interested in like layering it on top of our fulfill data, as I've made clear to Kabir, to like automatically run certain reporting and all that good stuff. Um, but the what I've heard from folks in our industry, and it feels very true, is that I think that everyone at our company should get somewhat familiar with using a AI tool, and everyone's going to have to figure out their own use cases, basically. And no matter what your job role is, I think that it'll make your job easier or better or more effective or some combination of that. Um, and so, like, some people might get frustrated when they go on and it's like not providing exactly what they want or, not being this like magical tool at first. But I think there's certain folks that are at our company who are getting a lot of benefit out of it. So, yeah, it's cool. I'm actively learning it.
Yeah, I think that's the phase everyone's in. That's all you can be doing. It's constantly changing, and we're all constantly learning right now. But it's impressive to see how you really just got to take the leap. And yeah, more AI tools to come, at least on the Fulfill side, and I'm sure also on the Nolo app side.
Yeah, you're beyond level one if you're making your own custom GPT. That's a good starting. It's a good starting point.
Why don't you guys give me a little bit about like Kabir, why don't you tell me like how is Fulfill? I mean, I know you have your own AI tools within Fulfill, but like give me your hot take on ChatGPT and like working on ChatGPT and Fulfill and the more common tools out there. Like how are you layering those things? Like what does Fulfill do with it?
Yeah, I think it's a interesting, like you have to look at the short and the long term. Obviously, things are changing very quickly, but there's kind of two approaches, as you mentioned. AI within the platform and being able to engage with agents and chatbots, co-pilots, whatever you want to call it, that will help you answer questions or engage and change things within the platform itself. But then there's also, to your point, will the future state of like the operating system just be either like ChatGPT or Claude, and you're constantly engaging with those interfaces, and they complete the actions for you. So you're just like telling them what to do or programming them what to do, and then they just go and do it. So you're no longer going in and clicking buttons and updating records. It's just these AI agents. So that gets to, I mean, from a technical perspective, like you have to have that MCP like layer defined well, and like making sure those AI bots can engage with your API. We're getting there. I think that is the future state. I think Sharun's talked about that on other podcasts, but it's not like all the way there yet. So once we get to that place where we can rely on those layers to engage with Fulfil's API, and a lot of tools are starting to do that. I think Zapier just released some pretty cool automation you can do through them just because they have these kind of MCP layers for a lot of tools. Once we get there, then it's like, okay, great, tell Claude what to do. This container's late, or you have an agent that's programmed to read through your email. It knows that the container's coming late and it updates the planned delivery date. And then it goes a step further and notifies all of your customers that were waiting on that shipment that their stuff is going to be late. Like that's the future world I'm envisioning. Now, are we there yet? No, but would I like to be there in the near future? Yes. And I think it is possible. And having these sources of truth and reliable data sources that aren't just like Google Sheets, like having all of your product data or PO data in an Airtable or in Fulfil, and having all of that inventory and historical data, it's just going to make these tools more powerful. So people will start accruing a lot more value out of these platforms.
What are interesting ways that Fulfil customers are using ChatGPT right now?
Ooh, I mean, on the ops side, maybe not ChatGPT specifically, but we've seen some AI tools get introduced. So another kind of partnership plug is Parabola has just introduced a lot of like AI agents into their model where you can just ask their chatbot, like, how do I automate this? And they've automated it on top of Fulfil or with other data sources. Like you talked about 3PL reconciliation, they'll like ingest your invoice and reconcile it against the Fulfil data, things like that. And other people are just like, what you described is what can I think up? How do I'll feed it the data warehouse data, and I will be sending you an article on how to do that where ChatGPT can look at the data warehouse and then ask it questions and ask it anything. So I don't know, Oliver, if you've seen anything more interesting on your side of the house.
Yeah, well, it's kind of seen a slightly different thesis on it, like in terms of what we do at Nolo. AI makes it possible to do business analysis 10 times faster than you could have done business analysis 6 months ago, 10 months ago. So, yeah, I can run a single discovery session, send out a requirements form that someone fills in with all the basics on their business, and then I can provide context around solutions that we have, and you can mash the whole thing together and you can get a product requirements doc that's compelling enough to provide a project brief that a product owner can take to their senior leadership and start getting buy-in across all of the different people that they need to convince around a project. And so I think that one of the biggest opportunities internally at brands is to start increasing their sophistication around their own internal product ownership or like product management, and implementing tools like, it's really hard in your own business to have the time to, like, you all do a meeting and you come up with lots of ideas, or you workshop a process, or you think how you could change. We all get excited, and then you start riffing and you're like, we're going to change everything. No one's got the time to come away from that and then do the busy work to move it on. Whereas now, if I'm able to run my discovery and road mapping, I can probably do 10, 12 companies concurrently at the moment. I used to be able to do 3 or 4. So that would indicate to me that if you're running your own business, you've now, to your point, you've got capacity to do things you didn't have before. You can run those workshops, lean on the AI call recording, and I've started to see more and more clients turning up with your calls now being recorded because they've dropped their little bot into the call, ripping the highlights of that, using that to actually understand your own business better. From this discussion, if you're going out to market, say you're going to go and buy an ERP, you go and speak to 3 ERP vendors, record all the calls. At the end of it, right, based on my requirements, can you tell me, from the 3 conversations, can you summarize my requirements and then give me a fit assessment versus the 3 vendors and identify the conversations that I need to follow on with? That's the kind of stuff that I'm like, it's so obviously exciting. Like call transcription is great. It's so good. We don't need to write notes anymore. But also, you can do so much of that busy work. And I'd encourage that would be where I'd be investing if I was internal at a brand, trying to take on a little bit more and level up the product ownership, product management side of the business. Beyond relying on third parties, because you're always going to be led when it's someone else doing it inside your business.
On the cash flow topic, that just to bring it back to this, I did do a cash flow exercise with ChatGPT recently, where I had a decision to make about investing in a new product line, and I dumped all the context I could. I dumped PDFs. I dumped a hypothetical P&L in there, and I was like, basically, can you spit out a 36-month cash flow based on investing in this? I want you to buy a new inventory every 3 months. You know, this is my expected overhead. This is my expected ROAS. And it spit out a cash flow and a P&L based off basically verbal cues. And it didn't get it spot on, or didn't get it how I thought it would play out immediately. So then I was like, okay, give me like peaks and valleys across different months. Let's look at summer seasonality. Let's look at winter seasonality. Let's assume that there's a ramp up period of like 5 months before we get traction. And like, then it spit out this much more granular cash flow that I thought was pretty accurate. And then you layer on top, after all that context, you say, okay, based on what you know now and the opportunities that you've already seen from all this other stuff that you remember that we talked about, do you think we should do this or not? Tell me why or why not. And it came up with an opinion. I didn't end up going with the opinion, but it was a very thorough, financial, realistic way to approach a decision that I would have spent, just 4 hours putting together information, and it was really fast.
Or trying to get someone else up to speed and dealing with all their personal biases, and they're thinking about it because of their relationship to you and how they want to be perceived and all this other stuff. You can just cut through it and get that kind of thought partner, and like question master is the other side.
Right. And I did end up giving the task to someone else, but it helped me decide whether or not to give someone the task. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even waste any more time on it, you now have a better starting point. I mean, clearly we could keep going for quite some time. There's a lot of interesting use cases, but unfortunately it seems like we are coming up on time, and the listeners can only take so much of us, I guess. But really appreciate you taking the time today, Zack, and talking to us. I think anyone who listens to this, any operator really could get tactical benefits, both for how to implement wholesale, some of the logistical decisions you've made, all the way from sales, ops, finance, and how to automate and run an efficient org. So I learned a lot and really enjoyed the conversation. And thank you for joining us.
Likewise. Thank you guys.